Let me start with the title, because the framing matters. This is not a technology talk. This is a talk about purpose. The core claim of this presentation is simple. Education is not broken because it missed a software update. It is broken because it has lost clarity on what it is for. We have spent decades optimizing a system. Faster content delivery, more standardized testing, more credentials, without asking whether the thing we are optimizing still serves the people it was built for. AI does not create this problem, but it makes ignoring it impossible. When intelligence becomes manufacturable, when a machine can recall, summarize, and generate at near zero marginal cost, the question of what education is actually supposed to produce becomes urgent. That is what this presentation is about.
Before we get into the mechanics, I want to lay out 5 commitments that anchor everything that follows. Think of these as design constraints, not aspirations. First, judgment over recall. In a world of infinite information, the scarce resource is no longer knowledge. It is discernment, the ability to evaluate, weigh, and decide under uncertainty. If we keep measuring recall, we are training people for a function machines already perform better. Second, agency before access. This one is critical, and I will come back to it several times. Giving someone access to a tool without building their capacity to use it is not empowerment. It is exposure. Third, navigation over jobs. We have organized education around job preparation for decades, but the labor market is shifting faster than any curriculum can follow. The goal should be to help people navigate lives, not just fill vacancies. Fourth, institutions as power. Institutions are not neutral infrastructure. They hold the line on values. If we let that function erode, we lose something that markets cannot replace. Fifth, explicit trade-offs. Every redesign has winners and losers. Pretending otherwise is not fairness, it is avoidance. We need to name the trade-offs. The center of this compass is purpose, agency, and cohesion. Everything we design should be measured against those 2 outcomes.
Now let us look at what is happening to the university as a product. Historically, the university bundled 3 things: knowledge, network, and credential. You could not get one without the others. That bundling justified the cost, the time, and the structure. AI is unbundling that package. Content delivery, the lecture, is an artifact of information scarcity. When you can get a world-class explanation of any topic from a machine at any time, the lecture as the default unit of teaching loses its justification. That function is being commoditized. Assessment is next. Automated evaluation already here for many types of knowledge work. Not all, but enough to shift the economics. What remains is what I call the human remainder, meaning and motivation. The parts of education that require human presence, human judgment, human relationship, mentorship, the experience of struggling with a hard problem alongside other people, the formation of identity. This is not a prediction about the future. This unbundling is already underway. The question is whether we design around it intentionally or let it happen to us. If the university bundle is breaking apart, then so is its signaling function. A degree used to be a reliable proxy. If you had one, employers could assume a baseline of knowledge, discipline, and social integration. That signal is weakening, not because degrees are worthless, but because they are increasingly insufficient. What is replacing it is not no degrees, it is a layered signal. At the base, layer 1, degrees remain relevant for regulated professions: medicine, law, engineering. That baseline is not going away. Layer 2 adds micro-credentials, verified, specific competencies. Can this person use this tool, apply this method, perform this task? Layer 3 is evidence: portfolios, projects, GitHub repositories. The shift from "what courses did you take" to "show me what you have built." Layer 4, and this is new, is behavior. AI-derived patterns about how someone learns, collaborates, and adapts. Learning velocity, the ability to pick up new things and apply them in novel contexts. The key message here: Evidence is beginning to outweigh seat time. How long you sat in a classroom matters less than what you can demonstrate. That shift has implications for how we design institutions. These ideas are not theoretical. There are institutions already experimenting with alternatives. Let me walk through 4 with an honest look at what each gets right and where each falls short. Western Governors University is competency-based. Time is variable, learning is constant. You progress when you demonstrate mastery, not when the semester ends. The risk? The measurement trap. When everything must be measurable, you optimize for what is easy to test, not necessarily what matters most. 42 School is peer-driven. No teachers, peer-graded, zero tuition. It works remarkably well for people who already have the self-direction to thrive in that environment. That is the risk. It selects for pre-existing agency rather than building it. Minerva is global and campus-free. Active learning, international rotation. Genuinely innovative pedagogy. But it maintains elite selectivity. It is not a model that serves the broad population. Guild, now called Guild Education, is employer-sponsored, debt-free, corporate-paid. Solves the financial barrier, but it introduces a different one. The employer decides what is worth learning. Worker lock-in, golden handcuffs. The bottom line? We have proofs of concept, but each carries specific failure modes regarding equity. No single model solves the problem on its own. This is the slide I consider most important in this deck. AI tools like large language models create a fork in the road. On one side, you have the thought partner use case. Someone uses AI to accelerate their thinking, to question their assumptions, to iterate faster. They are in dialogue with the tool. They are directing it. On the other side, you have the bypass, passive consumption, generating outputs without thinking. The tool does the work. The person submits the result. No learning occurs. Here is the problem. Which side of that fork you land on is not random. It depends heavily on whether you have already been taught how to learn. Tools that require self-direction privilege those who have already been given the scaffolding to develop it. Access without agency is not opportunity, it is exposure. That is the core tension. If we hand every student a powerful AI tool and call it equity, we are making a category error. The students who already know how to learn will use it to accelerate. The students who do not will be bypassed by it. The gap widens.
So if agency is the differentiator, we need to be precise about what it is and where it comes from. Agency is not a personality trait. It is not something you either have or you don't. It is built. It is infrastructure, constructed from specific conditions. Motivation and autonomy sit above the surface. They are visible, but they rest on a foundation that is largely invisible. Prior schooling, stability at home, mentorship, social production of identity. These are not individual achievements. They are environmental conditions. This is where many innovative education models go wrong. MOOCs, 42 School, self-paced learning platforms. They often select for agency rather than building it. If your model only works for people who already have strong self-direction, you are repackaging privilege as merit. That is not innovation. That is sorting. The implication for design. Any serious education. Redesign must include agency building as an explicit institutional function, not an assumed precondition. Let me name 3 specific failure modes that appear across current reform efforts. The free trap. Models like 42 School scale horizontally, more campuses, more locations, but not inclusively. They require intense self-regulation. Free access does not mean equitable access if the prerequisites for success are unevenly distributed. The corporate trap. Employer-sponsored education solves the debt problem, but creates a dependency. The employer decides what is worth learning. Credentials may not transfer. You have traded student debt for a different kind of constraint. The Matthew effect. Resources. Concentrate in institutions that are already wealthy. Elite universities attract more funding, better faculty, more attention. Meanwhile, the community colleges and regional institutions that serve the most vulnerable populations are chronically underfunded. Core versus periphery. The design principle that follows from this: if you do not design for the student with the least agency, you are designing a stratification machine. That should be the litmus test for any proposed reform. If the problems are this clear, why does change not happen faster? Because the system contains 5 interlocking feedback loops that reinforce the status quo. Accreditation reinforces seat time. To be accredited, you need to show that students spent a certain number of hours in certain kinds of instruction. That makes competency-based models structurally difficult to implement at scale. Hiring filters by degrees. As long as employers use degrees as a first-pass filter, students have a rational incentive to pursue them, regardless of what they actually learn. Funding rewards enrollment, not equity. Institutions are funded based on how many students they enroll, not on how well they serve those students or what outcomes they produce. EdTech drives lock-in. The technology platforms used in education create dependencies on proprietary systems, on specific pedagogical models, on data ecosystems that institutions cannot easily leave. Stratification reinforces itself. Prestige attracts resources which build more prestige. These 5 loops form a chain. You cannot fix one without addressing the others. That is why incremental reform has limited effect. The system absorbs small changes and returns to equilibrium. Given all of this, I see 3 plausible futures. They are not predictions, they are trajectories. Platform world. Corporations own the learning loops. Education becomes a product managed by tech companies. High efficiency, zero public accountability. Personalized learning, yes, but personalized to corporate objectives, not to human development. Drift. This is the default. We keep the current system, add AI on top, and hope for the best. The agency divide widens. The rich get human tutors. The poor get chatbots. Nothing fundamentally changes, but the gaps accelerate. Redesign. Public institutions and platforms work together. Intentional rebalancing. Agency is built, not just expected. This requires political will, institutional courage, and money. The default is drift. The risk is platform world. The goal is redesign. But redesign does not happen by accident. It is a choice, and it has costs. Redesign requires subtraction, not just addition. You cannot bolt AI onto the 19th century university and call it innovation. Something has to go. First, the lecture as the default unit of teaching. Not all lectures, not in every context, but the lecture as the standard format, the thing a student sits through for 3 hours a week, is an artifact of a world where information was scarce. That world is gone. Second, time as a proxy for learning. Credit hours, semesters, seat time requirements. These measure exposure, not competence. They persist because they are easy to administer, not because they reflect learning. Third, and this one is politically difficult, the illusion of neutrality. Fairness as sameness. The idea that treating everyone the same is the same as treating everyone fairly. It is not. Equal treatment in unequal conditions reproduces inequality. A serious redesign must be willing to allocate resources unevenly in order to produce more equitable outcomes. These are real losses. People are attached to lectures. Institutions are built around credit hours. Fairness as sameness is a comfortable default. Giving them up has political costs. That is precisely why most reform efforts stop short. If we accept those hard choices, what do we build instead? 4 design principles. Agency. As an outcome, the institution's primary job is not to deliver content. It is to build the capacity to learn. If a student leaves with knowledge but without the ability to direct their own learning, the institution has failed. Hybrid intelligence. Machines handle routine delivery. Humans handle meaning and motivation. This is not about replacing teachers. It is about redefining what teachers do. The human role shifts from information transfer to coaching, mentoring, and challenging. Continuous curriculum. The static degree, a fixed set of courses completed over a fixed period, is inadequate for a world where knowledge domains shift rapidly. Curriculum needs to become a living stream, continuously updated, modular, and responsive. Explicit transfer. Teaching skills in varied contexts so they survive the jump from classroom to reality. This is one of the most persistent failures of traditional education. Knowledge that works in academic settings but does not transfer to professional or life contexts. The overarching principle: the future is intentional design, not accidental inheritance. Let me be direct about something that is often left implicit in these conversations. Equity costs money. The foundation is redistributive funding. Money must flow to the institutions that serve the least privileged populations, not equally, disproportionately. That is what equity means in practice. The middle layer is constraints, no golden handcuffs. Credentials must be portable. If an employer pays for your education, you should still be able to take those credentials elsewhere. Otherwise, we have simply replaced one form of dependency with another. The top of the pyramid is labor. Coaching is a skilled profession. High tech requires high touch. And here is the uncomfortable implication. If you use AI to cut costs on coaching, you are cutting equity. The students who most need human support are precisely the ones who will lose it first if the budget logic says AI can handle that. This is where many reform proposals break down. They describe what the future should look like without accounting for what it costs. A redesign that does not include a funding model is not a redesign. It is a wish list. So what remains irreplaceably human in education? 3 things. Socialization, the experience of failing publicly, of being wrong in front of other people and surviving it, of learning to collaborate with people you did not choose. I cannot replicate this. It requires physical or at least genuine social presence. Formation, character, and ethics. The development of a moral framework, a sense of responsibility, an identity as someone who contributes to something larger than themselves. This is not a curriculum item. It is a byproduct of human relationship and institutional culture. Friction. Real problems that machines cannot simulate. The messy, ambiguous, high-stakes situations where there is no clean answer, where you have to make a judgment call with incomplete information and live with the consequences. As intelligence becomes cheaper, human judgment and connection become the premium value. That is the paradox of this moment. The more powerful AI becomes, the more important the irreducibly human parts of education become. But only if we protect them and fund them. Let me close with this. If we refuse to give up what no longer serves us, we preserve the form but lose the meaning. We keep the lectures, the credit hours, the degrees, but they become empty containers, rituals without function. If we accept the hard choices and if we redesign around agency, equity, and hybrid intelligence, we recover the true purpose of education, to build people who can think, judge, navigate, and contribute. That is the price of relevance. It is not free. It requires giving things up. It requires spending money differently. It requires institutional courage. But the alternative, drift, is not free either. It just distributes the cost differently to the students who can least afford it. Thank you.